So, Annie's parents are dead.
That's enough. You're going to jail.
Well, guess who's gonna visit me in jail, Batman? My parents.
What? Parents?
Bruce! Dead parents.
You let him get away? Oh my god, are you crying?
No, it's just raining.
The tragic backstory. There's nothing like dead parents to motivate a protagonist, or a dead spouse, or dead children, or dead anything, really. Having a character motivated by loss or by trauma or some tremendous wrong done in their past is a popular and very useful tool for telling stories. Tragedy and trauma creates pathos. It humanizes a character and makes them vulnerable. And for both heroes and villains, a powerful motivating trauma can help contextualize and, if not justify, then at least make the often extreme actions that heroes and villains must take understandable. Batman, without his dead parents to motivate him, is just a rich guy beating up criminals for fun. Roy Batty, without the horrifying death sentence of being a replicant hanging over his head, is just a sadistic terrorist for no reason. And Darth Vader, without the prequels, is just, a bad example, actually, if we're gonna set that. A tragic backstory can also be narratively convenient. Think about how many protagonists' home villages get burned down, how many parental figures are tragically slain by the evil empire, how many mysterious orphans with no family turn out to be the chosen one. It's a lot easier to have Luke charging off into space with an old wizard to save the princess when he doesn't have any pesky family relationships left to keep him tied to Tatooine. So, let's talk about Annie, and let's talk about the tragic backstory. What's playing in the background right now is the new animated short, Annie Origins, detailing the horrible events that led to Annie becoming an orphan. Now, I've done a video already gushing like a fanboy over the fantastic visuals, and there's going to be a link to that in the description or in one of those fancy little floating cards up in the corner. But for this video, I want to talk about the tragic backstory that the short depicts, because Annie didn't used to have this. Annie has had 2 lore states prior to this update, and in both of them, not only are both of her parents still alive, she never had a stepsister, and she was never tortured, tormented, or frightened by her pyrokinetic powers. In fact, both of her parents used to be accomplished magic users themselves. This, by the way, is also why Annie's base in-game character design has her running around in a schoolgirl outfit complete with backpack and cutesy cat ears. As far as the old lore was concerned, she was a mostly normal child who happened to be good at fire magic. In the new backstory, Annie's mother is still a witch, but she's long dead from an illness, and it's not clear from either the lore or the animated short whether her father is any kind of a wizard himself. I feel like if he was, though, he probably wouldn't have gone out like a buster in a simple house fire. Oh, what? Too soon? Now, like we've talked about, tragic backstories are convenient. They can be a great way to clear the slate and leave a protagonist free to pursue whatever wild adventure you have planned for them. For Annie, it's certainly easier to put her into conflict with other champions or tell stories about her when you don't have to constantly worry about how to get her parents out of the picture long enough for Annie to have an adventure. But I've been thinking, Annie's tragic backstory is fine. It's perfectly functional, it has plenty of pathos, it makes sense for the character, and yeah, thinking logically, if you gave a child the ability to make fire with their mind and summon a giant freaking shadow bear when she gets mad, of course it's going to end in tragedy. Of course she's going to kill her parents. But is that really the most interesting version of Annie's story? Child with magic powers accidentally kills parents because of course she does? I've seen that before. I've seen it a lot, actually, and it's just so obvious. And I think we can do better. Now again, like I said, there's nothing wrong with Annie's new lore. It's fine for what it's supposed to do. There's no huge glaring flaw in it that must be fixed. But let me just pitch you something real quick. What if we changed Annie's backstory from a riff on Carrie to a riff on the Addams family? What if instead of a traumatized, sad, broken bird type, Annie was more of a Wednesday Addams? What if her father was more of a sort of handsome Daddy Gomez, happily encouraging his daughter to set ever larger things on fire and weeping with pride the first time she summons Tippers? You could even keep the stepmother-stepsister situation that's present in the short animated feature, but instead of being a setup for a tragedy, you play it for comedy. That is to say, Lyanna and Daisy will be mostly normal people who now have to learn to coexist with an eccentric wizard dad and his terrifying pyrokinetic daughter who doesn't understand why setting things on fire might be a bad idea. Imagine what breakfast might be like in that household. Imagine how they celebrate holidays. Imagine whatever the League of Legends equivalent of Thanksgiving would be like. Annie's family full of mages and zany hextech scientists trying to get along with Daisy's family full of merchants and accountants. And this doesn't have to be just funny, it doesn't have to be just comedy. You can do some serious explorations of exactly what it means to have magic powers, what it means to be a mage or a wizard in the League of Legends universe. How do you relate to the world when you can set things on fire with your mind, and how do you build a family with someone who can't? This, by the way, would be especially interesting if you wrote stories to juxtapose it against someone like Lux, who, opposite to Annie, has to hide her magic powers and pretend they don't exist. Noxus is, after all, the nation that embraces and encourages magic, where Demacia tries to repress it. So you can tie the wider thematic conflict between those nations into those two characters and run them in parallel to get, a nice little bit of cadence going on. Now, obviously, at this point, it is way too late to change anything about Annie's origin story. They have committed, this is what it's going to be, and there's no video I can make that's going to make it change course, which might lead you to wonder, what the heck is the point of doing a video at all? Well, my point is this. Tragic backstories are convenient. They're tempting. They're often easy to write around. They're popular, and they come with a lot of pathos built in. They can be a good solution for telling a lot of the stories that you might want to tell. But they're not the only solution. And just because tragedy is thought of as more serious, that doesn't mean that tragedy is the only way to tell serious stories or explore serious themes. And it doesn't mean it's always the best way. Hey, thanks for watching. Comments go down below, and the like and dislike buttons are right there as well if you need them. I don't do these tightly scripted videos like this one very often because, well, I have bills to pay and YouTube isn't paying them. But maybe one day it will, if enough people hit subscribe and the bell to get notified. Hint, hint.